second panel for this afternoon session. We're going to be hearing from faculty in the Social Sciences Division next. And let me just give each a brief introduction. The keynote address is going to be given by Dr. Susan Penksa. She spoke just last night in downtown Santa Barbara on a similar topic of what she's going to be raising today. But anyway, Susan has been a member of our political science department since 1997 and has extensive experience with the European Union, international politics. She spent the fall semester in Bosnia on a Fulbright scholarship and has mounting experience that is just becoming more increasingly impressive to me every semester. Hearing her last night was really an eye-opening experience, and I just so appreciate what she brings to Westmont. And then to her right, Laura Montgomery is a professor in sociology anthropology, and she has been on the Westmont faculty since 1990. To her right is Allister Chapman, a relatively new professor in our history department, and Allister has been on the faculty since, I'm using my cheat notes here, I'm sorry, since 2004. A veritable babe in the academic. But he's already shown himself to be a formidable presence on our faculty and just a wonderful colleague. And then to his right is Professor Edd Noell in the Economics and Business Department. And Ed has been on our faculty since a long time ago, let's see, 1986. So Susan's going to kick off the session with some thoughts from her viewpoint in political science, and then we'll hear from the three. And I guess we haven't determined an order. So have you? Okay, so they've determined an order, and so they will each, and I'm going to invite each of them to speak from their seats at the table. It'll make things move a little bit more smoothly, and then if we have time at the end, we'll generate some panel discussion for some interchange between them. So at this point, I'd like to invite Susan up to the microphone. Susan.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to speak with you this afternoon about the global imperative through the lens of the social sciences. In the 21st century, as we've heard so richly expressed today, we have an undeniable need for graduates who appreciate the rich complexity of the global community. Our students need imagination, knowledge, skills, judgment, and sympathies to become effective citizens, innovators, and leaders. In order to do this, we encourage the study of the rich mosaic of political systems, cultural and religious traditions, foreign language acquisition, the understanding of the risks and the benefits of globalization, and wisdom about the physical and biological world. Being salt and light requires Christian scholars and citizens who speak truth to structures of power, but it also depends on individuals working within organizations as agents of change, using their empirical knowledge to become effective reconcilers, peacemakers, and advocates for justice. I'm going to focus my comments this afternoon on three topics, which I hope will provide the basis for an interesting panel discussion. The global imperative of security, lessons from contemporary politics, and the contribution of Westmont in meeting the global imperative of the 21st century. To that end, I'll begin by discussing the urgency of the global imperative of security. Modern forms of globalization, the acceleration of integration in communication, technology, and economics, these forces are revolutionizing societies, diffusing authority, and transforming the power of states, individuals, and transnational entities. It is an asymmetrical process, the benefits and costs of which are experienced differently by individuals and countries, dependent on such factors as individual access to education and healthcare and technology, geographic location, resource, wealth, the historical relationship of a country to colonialism, industrialization, capitalism, conflict, and political regime type. Clearly then, globalization is extraordinarily complex and far from monolithic. It's often conceptualized rather simply, but the process and its causes and effects requires much more study and application. What is clear is that globalization is fueling change within cultures, in political and economic systems, and among people and states. Accompanying this new world of interdependence and interconnectedness are the twin forces of dependence and despair, enemy and alienation, challenges, and conflict. In the 21st century, the global imperative is to ensure security and well-being for a greater percentage of the Earth's inhabitants. Security, most simply defined, is the absence of threats to the global system, to countries, and to individuals. Currently, we're witnessing and participating in what I call the acceleration of the globalization of insecurity. Today's threats to the well-being of global society are well known: poverty, disease, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, civil conflict, genocide, global warming, the scarcity of food and energy. Consider for a moment the example of Kosovo, with a population of 2 million, where upwards of 70% of the population is unemployed, and where problems of human trafficking, organized crime, corruption, ethnic conflict, and economic despair have implications for surrounding countries. Kosovo's challenges can't be solved by one country. Neither can the fact that historic highs in world food prices have disproportionately affected the world's poor, who are spending as much as 75% of their income, if they have any, on food. While we worry about the price of fuel, the world's poorest billions are starving. These are transnational problems that require long-term strategic planning and oversight, and the political will of government, civil society, and individuals. Social scientists, those of us who study the complexity of political, cultural, and economic systems, have knowledge to offer. We know that political violence is most often strongly associated with poverty, underdevelopment, the disproportionate division of resources, and unmet expectations, problems that often become compounded by frail government regimes. Frail countries often become failed states. If countries are going to establish the rule of law and eliminate violence, then countries in conflict emerging from crisis need reliable, democratically controlled security forces. This is why reform of the police, the military, judiciaries, intelligence services, this is why these sectors require reform to stabilize society, but also to ensure that basic human rights are guaranteed. But establishing the rule of law and democratic security sector reform are not the only instruments for guaranteeing security. Sustainable security depends on political and economic development. The following quote amply characterizes the complexity of global change and the holistic elements of modern security. Quote, "Security is today far more than a military matter. The strengthening of political consultation and economic cooperation, the development of resources, progress in education and public understanding, all these can be as important or even more important for the protection of the security of a nation or an alliance as the building of a battleship or the equipping of an army. These two aspects, civil and military, can no longer be safely considered in watertight compartments, either within or between nations." You may find it surprising to learn that that quote is from a declaration agreed to by NATO, not in 2008, but in 1956, in the early years of the Cold War. Social scientists and political leaders have known for decades that security encompasses a range of complex, interdependent issues, and that civilian capabilities are equally as important as military power, including education. But as the NATO statement acknowledges in 1956, quote, "Perhaps we have not yet fully recognized their essential relationship or have done enough." Most recently, after September 11th, we have rediscovered the truths expressed in the NATO Declaration of 1956. Terrorist camps continue to proliferate along the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. At first glance, it may seem that the best way to reduce the threat of terrorism is by military action, using special military forces, engaging in selective airstrikes, and by supporting and reforming the Pakistani and Afghan military and police services.